the three most important letters in the alphabet are O-S-T. And they all laugh because I didn't know until that point that Ost is every Scandinavian language for cheese, okay? But it remains the case that for me, O-S-T are the three most important letters. So what does O stand for? O is your objective. What does S stand for? S is your strategy. What does T stand for? T are the tactics. And the answer to that question, how do you influence government? For me, you set that objective very, very clearly. And where I think you're right, Ian, I think both here and in the UK, we set ourselves an objective quite a long time ago now to raise awareness. And I think both of us have had incredible success at that. But actually, looking back, it was evidence of how bad things were that we felt we had to set that as the objective, as opposed to what the real objective should be, which is that, and I would put the objectives like this: what do we actually want from governments around the world in relation to mental health? First of all, we want there to be genuine parity between mental and physical health. Above all, I think we want to have an approach in government that is about trying to help people stop becoming mentally ill. And that means, you know, I think the minister's got a lot of responsibilities, but I can see why actually housing and mental health is not a bad way to kind of think about things. Environment, education, there's different ways you can do it, but actually to have a preventive approach. And then the third thing is to have, once people feel that they need services, that the services are going to be there. And the worry I have of the relative success of the campaigns that we've all been engaged in on awareness is that we've driven up the levels of awareness. We've then propelled people towards feeling, right, well, I'm going to be open as well. And I'll go and tell my friends, tell my parents, tell my sister, tell my brother, go and see a doctor. And then they get to see the doctor and they find, I don't know what it's like here, but certainly in our country, well, that's very, sorry to hear all that. You probably need to see somebody that's more expert in this than I am, and you're going to have to wait for quite a few months. And I think the net effect of that, there's a risk that actually we end up making, I sometimes feel we end up making things worse. Because unless we persuade governments that this genuinely is a priority, and when I say priority, what does priority mean? Priority means more important than other things. So it's about where it stands in the hierarchy. And you have to make noise. We all have to make noise about this. Governments in the main, I mean, I've worked in a government, you're bombarded. Everybody thinks that what they're doing and their cause is just. Everybody thinks that the money that they're asking for, they deserve it more than other people. So you actually have to build the arguments, and you have to build them and communicate them and narrate them over time. And the way to do that, I think this is where the awareness and the services can link up together. The way to do that is actually through storytelling. We all have stories. And we have to tell them, and we have to join the dots over time. And I think what's really interesting about Australia, you've got compulsory voting, right? I wish to God we did. You've got compulsory voting, which means that young people are voting. Young people are voting. But when you see, and it's the same in our country, the biggest killer of young men in the UK is suicide. There is an anxiety epidemic amongst young women in particular. And we sort of blindly tell each other, oh, well, it's social media, it's Mark Zuckerberg's fault in my view. And it might be social media, but we don't know that. We haven't really done the sort of work to drill down on why this happens. And so I think that is about people. The reason why, to me, openness is so important is because it's only if we get the openness that we start to join the dots together, where politicians start to realise that every time they go out to an event, people are raising the same issues. Every time they get their constituency surgeries, they're actually talking to people who are there because the problems that they're bringing to them are related to the fact that they might have a mental health condition that is not properly being addressed. And you build the story over time like that. It's not easy, it takes time, it's not straightforward, but that in the end, I think, is how you make change. You make change by people coming together and saying, we are going to make change.